Hello and welcome on into the Rooted Podcast. Tim Stromble coming to you again from our Rooted Podcast production facility out here in beautiful Denver, Colorado. Big thanks again for joining the show this week, be it with the audio-only version on iTunes, SoundCloud, or our host website, stayrooted.com, or our new full-length video version of the interview on our YouTube channel. By the way, don't forget to subscribe wherever you're finding us so you don't miss out on more awesome content as we put it out. Also, I've been previewing it for a couple of shows now, but stay tuned as we have some exciting news we'll be able to share with you, hopefully in the next few weeks, about what our 2019 has in store for us. We're very excited about that stuff. Also, don't forget to check out Rooted TV, our TV platform, which airs on our website, YouTube, and through our awesome partners, of course, over at Cannabis Club TV. Big shout out to those guys. You can check them out, cannabisclub.tv, or your local dispensary if they play the content there. Really excited for the show today. When we launched the idea that is this podcast, 3 or 4 years ago, we really wanted to help the cannabis industry grow by profiling entrepreneurs, their companies, and seeing what advice they had to give to those who wanted to enter the industry. And through the last 3 years, we've interviewed a ton of bold, groundbreaking, risk-taking, hardworking people, and it's been awesome to continue to see them grow and become bigger names in the industry. Well, our guest today absolutely fits that bill and has been someone we've been wanting to get on the show for a while now. She's widely considered, one of the most hardworking people in the industry, and she has the credentials to prove it, many of which we'll share with you in today's show. Her name is Celeste Miranda, and she is the CEO. Get ready for this, by the way. She is the CEO of the Cannabis Marketing Lab, publisher of Terpenes and Testing, also Extraction Magazine, Cannabis Compliance and Packaging, and CBD Health and Wellness. Now, if that's not enough for you, she also is the producer of the Cbd Expo Tour, Canna, Farm, Con, and Concentration 2019. So you immediately see what I mean. She's as busy as they come. She's been great enough to grace us with her presence on the show this afternoon. We're going to talk about marketing in the cannabis space, producing content, and producing event after event. Now, we're going to welcome Celeste in just a second. Before we do, a quick shout out to our awesome sponsor, Green Bros, home of the world's premier dry harvesting solutions. And if you haven't heard, Green Bros just announced a cool partnership with Purigen to bring you the box. Now, this thing is absolutely amazing. Originally developed for tissue sterilization for surgical implications, the box remediation technology can eliminate mold or other microbial organisms in your harvest. It can also rehydrate your flower if it's become too dry, or even infuse terpenes into your flower, allowing you to create a one-of-a-kind flavor profile that's truly unique to your company. All using reactive oxygen technology, meaning no harmful microwaves or radiation that can drastically harm your flower. Simply put, you need to see this thing to believe it. It's hit the market. There are grows that have took the leap despite the fact they haven't seen it. And once you see it for yourself, you see what these grows are producing, you're gonna want one, okay? Hit up Green Bros at 844-379-8746 or info@greenbros.com for more information. Okay, without any further ado, let's welcome in our guest for this afternoon, Celeste Miranda. Just to shorten it down, I'm gonna say CEO of the Cannabis Marketing Lab, in addition to being a producer and publisher. Celeste, welcome to the show. So many irons in the fire. For me as an interviewer, it's tough to know where to start, but I imagine it has to be tough for you too. When you wake up in the morning, how do you know which project to even start with?
Oh my God. Hi, Tim. And first of all, thank you for having me on your show. It's a lot of fun to do these. So it's a pleasure for me. When I wake up in the morning, that's an interesting question. It's funny because we use Basecamp as a project management system. So really my first thing to do is to jump onto Basecamp and see what fires I have to put out. And so that's kind of where I spend my first few hours. But it's fun. And, I've never been somebody to get stuck on one thing. So it's interesting. I get to kind of pick and choose which project is the one that we're working on today and which one we need to make better or put some effort into and that sort of thing. But for sure, it never gets boring. So that's definite.
It almost takes a level of some sort of a business ADD to be able to jump from here to here to here to here while it all makes sense in your head.
That's very true. That is very true. And, if it wasn't for my team, I don't think I could ever do it. My team is absolutely amazing. And so they're great at, I have the events division and then the publishing division and then the marketing division, and they're great at taking care of things. So I just have to jump in where I'm absolutely needed. And so it's good. And it's really hard, though, when you have that many different companies going in the space to know, to make sure that you work on the business instead of in the business. And so that's always a challenge. But, we do well. And I just try to keep up with my staff. So.
Now, out of the gate, I mentioned all these projects. I know the answer to this question, but the listeners don't. So in terms of all of these projects you've gotten underway, which one of them came first and gave you your foothold in the cannabis space?
So interestingly enough, it was the Cannabis Marketing Lab. And today, the Cannabis Marketing Lab has about 50 clients in 6 different countries that all in the cannabis space that we handle the marketing for. But, originally I came from having just a traditional marketing firm for 10 years prior to getting into the cannabis space. And so I mainly handled law firms, and I had a chain of hair salons and things like that. And so I had that for 10 years. And then 9 years ago, I could kind of see, the forest through the trees and what the cannabis industry was going to do. And that was way before Colorado, before Uruguay, before any of them. And when I said I was going to transition my marketing firm into the cannabis space, everyone thought I was crazy. They were like, what? This is 9 years ago. They were like, what are you doing? What are you talking about? And I said, no, I really think this is going to be a good thing. And so I did, and I'm just super grateful that it worked out. So that was how it originally came.
Celeste, I was looking through your pre-interview, and it says that you come from a traditional marketing background, which is in quotes. The people watching this just saw the air quotes, but if you're listening at home, you could hear the air quotes. Why is that in quotes? Is that because it's outside of the industry?
Correct. And so it wasn't in the cannabis space. For 10 years, I, handled, like I said, law firms, hair salons, things like that, and just a regular traditional marketing firm. And, then 9 years ago, I made the decision to niche into the cannabis space. So
what part about the cannabis space do you consider like non-traditional? Like, it's just overall, but I guess a more in-depth reason why I'm asking that question is it seems like in terms of cannabis marketing, there are so many unconventional approaches that you have to take due to the limited areas in which you can market. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Very true. When I say traditional, I mean like just your typical mainstream companies, that type of thing. And so, I guess I could use the word interchangeably, traditional versus, mainstream. But that's pretty much what I mean, is that I niched so far down out of any mainstream, typical mainstream marketing, especially when I did it 9 years ago. People thought I was crazy. I can't even tell you.
Now, you've owned the Cannabis Marketing Lab for 9 years, the media side for the last 2.5 years. You've built out a team of 40 plus that you talked about just a moment ago. What I haven't said is you are a full owner or a part owner of 10 different companies. Now, when you were in marketing outside of this, were you pursuing other companies, or did you wait until you developed into the cannabis industry? Because 10 companies is a lot of companies.
Yeah. Definitely. I waited. When I first got in, I only got in through the Cannabis Marketing Lab because it's what I knew. I knew marketing. I'm a marketer, down deep. And when I got into the industry, it was only through the Cannabis Marketing Lab. Shortly after that, I started dipping my feet into other spaces that, because of the position I was in with the Cannabis Marketing Lab, I was able to see where the niches were and what needed to be filled. And so, especially like when we first started terpenes and testing, I started terpenes and testing because I had clients who wanted to advertise in a scientific publication, and there was none. And so that's the reason terpenes and testing was started. And so then when I polled my readers the first time on terpenes and testing, I said, what do you want to see more of? 90% came back extraction. So that was my basis for starting Extraction Magazine, because I said, I can't make this whole magazine about extraction, but I can make another magazine about extraction. And so that's kind of how it all happened. From my position in TCML, I was able to really see the niches and what was needed.
So you just woke up one day and you're like, I'm going to be a boss. I'm going boss mode. All these companies are going to be mine. I'm just kidding. But I mean, you bring on the first project, the second project, the third project after the Cannabis Marketing Lab. Now you're upwards towards 10. At what point do you say, okay, I don't know if I can take on another company, or is there a limit?
No, Tim, there is. And, I think that I'm approached every day to get involved in companies and on boards and investing and this and that. And I have to be, what it comes to today is I'm so grateful to be in the position where I don't have to take on another client. I don't have to take on another business or another company. But it's interesting because I want to help now. I'm in the position more so now to help people that I think deserve it and that need it. And, in this industry and on the medicinal side of things and that sort of thing. So, and I myself, I have MS. And so 8 years ago, 9 years ago, I was diagnosed with MS. And so that was a lot of what even got me in this industry as well to begin with. Is CBD helped me more than all the drugs that Stanford was giving me at the time. And so, it's interesting. I think that when opportunities come to me now, I'm picky in who I work with. I'm picky in who I take on. But there definitely is a threshold, because all that I have today is my hours. That's it. That's all I have in a day is my hours. And so, I have to spend those as wisely as I can. And in this industry, that's hard because there's so much going on and there's so much happening and there's so many cool things coming about and this and that. If I could, duplicate myself, I'd be doing so much more than I'm doing even.
Shift the conversation just a little bit. We've had a number of female entrepreneurs on the show. Personally, making the distinction between male and female entrepreneurship isn't something that I'm super interested in, because I think if you're a good entrepreneur, you're a good entrepreneur. It doesn't matter if you're male or female. But I still like to touch on it when I can, because I like keeping the conversation going. We've had some amazing people on this show. Ashley Pachulo was one of our recent guests of Point 7 Group, who is a writer and someone in the industry that's doing good things. I could go on. I'll keep it brief there. But the industry is still widely considered male-dominated. But at the same time, I mean, someone like yourself has easily as impressive, if not more so, credentials and responsibilities than just about anyone I've had on the show, male or female. So I wonder how you approach this topic when people bring it up. Do you see that male-female dynamic, or is it something that you also don't like really talking about?
I'm the same with you, Tim. I've never really cared about making a distinction. I've been approached a lot by, women in this, women in that. And I've never really been a big pro activist on that. I think there's better things I can be doing, because to me, a good entrepreneur is a good entrepreneur, like you said. And it doesn't come up often where I see that it would matter or make a difference. But it's funny you mentioned it, because I just had a situation yesterday where I told the president of my events division, I said, I wonder if this would have gone down differently if I had been a male. And I don't often say that, Tim. And it was so funny because I said that yesterday for the first time in a very long time, or very few times. And it doesn't, I wouldn't say that it dominates anything in what I do or what I've done. But every now and then it'll creep up where I think, that was a good old boys group I was dealing with. And I wonder if, but honestly, I don't dwell on that. I don't spin my wheels on that. I don't waste time on that.
Speaking about good entrepreneurs being good entrepreneurs, your company that has, or your myriad of companies of 40 plus employees, is entrepreneurial qualities something you look for in a hire, since you have so many people that need to do so many things?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I can't tell you how much I look for entrepreneurs to add to my team, entrepreneurial spirits, mentality, that whole thing. The one thing that my staff knows that I don't do and I never will waste my time on doing is micromanaging. I hate that. I will not have you as part of my team if I have to micromanage you. I give them all wide lanes. I give them all the tools to do what they need to do, but yet I give them the freedom of creation. And it's what I want to be an inspiration to them. And, I want them, I don't want them to be in a box. I want them to think outside of the box, and I want them to become great leaders and entrepreneurs. And, when I'm retired and old and kicking back and probably my wheelchair, I want to look at them and be able to say, I helped them become who they are and what they are in this industry. And so definitely, especially in an industry this young and this fast moving, I think you have to have some entrepreneurial qualities, even working for these companies.
Real quick, again, I want to let you know this podcast brought to you by our good buddies over at Green Bros, home of the world's premier dry harvesting solutions. From small-scale cultivations all the way up to commercial grows, Green Bros dry trimmers, trichome extractors, and destemmers want to save you time, money, and labor. I mentioned their sorting machines. I've mentioned the box. They just recently partnered with Pure Pressure LLC to bring you rosin presses. So for all of those things, you want to hit them up at greenbros.com or call 844-DRY-TRIM to schedule a free demo in your area today. That's 844-DRY-TRIM. You're listening to the Rooted Podcast. We're talking to Celeste Miranda, CEO of the Cannabis Marketing Lab, in addition to being a producer and publisher on a myriad of other projects. I will link all of those sites in the description of the podcast below. So go ahead, venture down, or if you're on YouTube looking at the video, venture down, check out all these links and what Celeste is doing. Your expertise is in marketing, publishing, and producing, but going back to the beginning of the show, marketing is your largest background. And the subject of marketing around the cannabis space is something I love talking about because it's been so murky over the past decade or so. It seems to be getting better, but how have you seen it change from when you started the Cannabis Marketing Lab to where it is now?
Oh, God, Tim, that was interesting. It's interesting because it's been sort of up and down, but yet cyclical at the same time. So, we've gone through the periods where Facebook was taking us down, Instagram was taking us down, and then they'd leave us alone, and then they came back again and took us down, and then they'd leave us alone. Crazy. And, the Google ads trying to just be smarter than they are, landing pages up and all that. It's a game, and it's just stupid. It wastes so much time because in the end, it will all be okay. And, so we're going to look back on this and go, wow, those games that we played. But definitely it's obviously progressed, before when we first started, we couldn't even get billboards up, things like that. Today we get billboards up. We get, some paid advertising, we can get through and working and that sort of thing. And so it has definitely changed. But, I think more than anything, what we've seen is that in the beginning, we're like, all of our clients said, okay, design these boxes, design this packaging, and all of their logos or all their symbolism was the cannabis leaf, or in some way or another. Now we're designing packaging and websites and things like that are so modern and so minimalistic and that type of thing that there's no symbolism even of cannabis. And so that has probably been the biggest change and leap, is just the branding has come a long way.
Speaking on the social platforms you mentioned just a second ago, Facebook recently made news as they're allowing cannabis companies to show up in search results, which seems like such a small thing to make news, but in terms of the cannabis industry and cannabis companies, it is pretty big news. Now, I should point out your account can still be shut down or removed with no real warning or explanation because they keep their guidelines super vague. So how are you dealing with social marketing? I mean, I know that's a loaded question and there's a bunch of different ways to go with it, but you've mentioned how it's getting easier as your approach getting easier.
Mm-hmm. We have a whole social team here that handles all of our accounts and things like that. And they stay so up to date on what's going on and the changes. But I can tell you that Facebook did have it in their search for all this time that you could search. And then all of a sudden they said no. And they stopped it. And then that didn't last for very long, and they brought it back to where you could be found in the search again. But, if I was to tell any cannabis business owner anything about social, from our experience and years on this, I would say, do not put a lot of your time or effort into Facebook. It's just not the place to be. It's not cannabis friendly. It's not going to be something that pays off for all your time and effort. Yes, you should have a business page, absolutely, because some people use Facebook as a directory. And so for that reason, you should have a presence and keep that presence, current in some posts you put on there and that sort of thing. But don't put a ton of time into Facebook. The same thing with Twitter. The cannabis industry just isn't on Twitter, not to any huge degree. And so we've carefully deduced that, the places through all of our A/B testing, trial and error and all that is very heavily Instagram and LinkedIn. And those are the two places. And a lot of people say, wow, LinkedIn, what? But there is such a huge cannabis community on LinkedIn that it's crazy, and it definitely cannot be ignored. And so if you're going to choose any of them to pick your time, where your time's going to go and where you're going to put your effort, I would definitely say Instagram and LinkedIn. Now, that's not saying your page can't be shut down on Instagram. That's happened. But, keep that into consideration. Always just make sure that your webpage is primarily where you do business. And you get acquire emails, do, a lot of email marketing, that sort of thing, because really at the end of the day, the only thing you truly own is your website.
Very interesting stuff. Now, do you think full legalization is something that has to happen before all of these social networks become more friendly? I mean, Instagram can obviously still shut you down, but I totally agree with you. That's where the majority of cannabis community exists.
Yeah.
Now, if it goes legal, I've heard some people say it'll still be tightly regulated because it is a substance like alcohol, tobacco, something that doesn't really get to advertise too much on all those socials. But I was just wondering where you thought it was going to go if legalization happens.
I think obviously all the controls will be opened. It'll be a much different ball game. You'll be able to freely be able to advertise where you want. You're not going to have the risk of being shut down. Yes, there's still going to be rules and regs, just like the alcohol industry or the tobacco industry. But you're not going to just wake up tomorrow and your page is gone. You know what I mean? And so, but it will take full legalization, I think, before that happens, most definitely.
Shifting conversation to the Cbd Expo Tour, whose most recent stop was in Florida. By the time this podcast comes out, it will have been in Florida, with CBD becoming, arguably a larger market than cannabis itself, because CBD is something that really touches everyone. You must be seeing a great response to this tour of events, right?
Tim, I never in a million years thought Cbd Expo would be what it has been. And this was so funny. It was just... We were actually at our Terpenes and Testing World Conference when I just had the idea to do a CBD Expo. And it was literally just throwing it out, it's so like writing it on a napkin type thing. It was so funny. And we put it up and started arranging it. Our first one that was, in Anaheim. And it was shocking. We never, ever, ever in a million years were prepared or expected it to be what it was. And so right time, right place, you know what I mean? And it was just a huge success. And so we have a lot in store for CBD Health and Wellness Magazine and CBD Expo, most of which I can't talk about yet, but there's a lot in store for it and some really exciting stuff. And I just can't tell you how much bigger it ended up being than I ever thought that it would be.
Well, keep us in mind. And when you want to talk about this stuff and plug it, let me know. We'll get you back on the show. Even if it's like a mini episode, we'll get it going. And I mean this in the most complimentary fashion, but I feel like it's, I guess, so business ADD is the only way I can seem to make it register in my head, but I mean it as a compliment because not many people can sit there and say, I have this idea, wrote it on a napkin, now it's this huge thing. I mean, the people that you work with, are they ever like, oh God, Celeste has another idea. Here we go.
Oh Tim, they're always like that. Oh my God, that's like a typical day in our office. If I walk out of my office and just walk out and say, you guys, I have an idea. They're like, oh my God. I mean, they're just, I have them spinning all the time. And it's so funny because the other day I said, you guys, I think it would really be, I think the industry needs this other type of magazine, and I mentioned what it was. And they were just like, oh God. And, I had promised them a while back that I would not start another magazine yet. And oh my God, I just saw the looks on their face. They were like, are you kidding me? It's hilarious. So yeah, they're getting used to it though.
Tell me more about the Cbd Expo Tour. What do people who attend these events see? Why should they attend? Okay,
so it's ended up really interesting with the CBD Expos. So, people ask me a lot, is it a B2B thing? Is it a B2C thing? What's going on there? And it's really in the middle. And there's a lot of consumers there who want to learn more about it. And then there's a lot of businesses there who are looking for CBD oil, distributors, things like that. In fact, at our East coming up next week in Florida, the creator of Jelly Bellies is going to be there, and he's looking for a CBD supplier because they're coming out with CBD Jelly Bellies.
That's the coolest thing I've heard in a while. That's pretty awesome, and they're a big mainstream company, so that's exciting stuff.
Right. So David contacted us and he said, my assistant and I are going to be, we're looking for a supplier. We're going to start production on our CBD Jelly Bellies. And so, it's fun stuff like that. And it's interesting because it brings that interesting mix. And then, of course, we put a lot of medical pace into it too with the different cannabinoids coming up. There's so much more than CBD. There's CBG, CBC, so many of them, CBN. And so we want to put out education, medical education on that as well. And so Adam does a great job with our speaker lineup and our speaker list and making sure that we have very, very vetted speakers. And so it's really neat because, and even at Florida now, we decided to start doing Cbd certification training. So that's going on the day before as well, where, you can be certified as a CBD coach, a CBD practitioner, a CBD, there's a couple different certifications. So, and a ton of people have signed up for that. So it's so interesting, and it's going to, like I say, get even more interesting, but it's fun. And, so it's a lot, it's a good place to go if you're a consumer and you want to learn about it. And it's also a good place to go. We had a ton of nurses show up at the last one, so it's a good place to go as well on a B2B sector.
Talking with Celeste Miranda, CEO of the Cannabis Marketing Lab, in addition to being a producer and publisher at a number of other projects. Again, linked in the description of the podcast below, so you can go ahead and check that out. Just a couple more questions for you, Celeste. I have to know, entrepreneurially, how do you know if it's a good idea?
Tim, if I could answer that, I'd be a billionaire. You know what I mean? But I have to tell you that, a lot of people just look at my companies and they say, wow, you've spotted the niches. You've been real successful. True. But no one knows how many ideas I've tried that didn't fly.
That's what I wanted to bring up is how many times do you say, okay, this is a great idea. And either you or someone else is like, nah, I don't think so.
Right. And a lot of times, entrepreneurs are stubborn. A lot of times I'll have people tell me that is a horrible idea won't work, but I've got in my head, no, that's a good idea, and so you try it anyway. And, I've had, like every other entrepreneur, Tim, I've had so many ideas fail. And, but you have to try and you have to see. I think probably the biggest caveat with that would be if it's not working, cut it quick. And that's what I've come to learn. Don't let it bleed you. Don't wait. If it's not working, it's not going to work, cut it and move on to the next thing, because you know pretty much off the bat, or real soon, if something's going to catch on, like the Cbd Expo or Terpenes and testing or anything like that. And, but there were other ones that we did that I cut the cord quick on. And I think that's where the talent comes in at.
So that's something that you kind of have to learn to do, is to say, okay, because I mean, some people would say, oh, it's coming. I can wait, 3 months, 6 months, a year. And some people would say, okay, no, you should give it this amount of time. So how do you know? Is that just a feel that you have for this isn't working, or it is?
I listen to my gut. I mean, to me, it's my gut. And, usually also, Tim, before I start something, I'll say, okay, I'm going to set aside this amount of money to spend on it. And I'm going to spend that money as wisely as I can. And at the end of the day, when that money's gone, if it's not where I want it to be, then I'm cutting it. And so I think that's the way that I've controlled, so many things that I've tried.
And let's now preview. We'll shift one last time. Preview to 2019. I mean, so many things going on. I'm guessing you have a ton coming up in 2019. Some things I'm sure you can't talk about. Some things you can. What does the next year look like for you?
Oh, God. 2019 will be, honestly, my biggest year in my lifetime, I think. And it's all going to come down to my 2019, how the rest of this rolls out for me. And I actually have 7, when I count them all, events, large event stops. We're literally doing a huge event every other month. And so it's going to be a hard year. It's going to be tough. And, I think so many times if I didn't have the MS, I would go twice as fast as I go. But I know, right? I had to be given something to put me in check. But I'm going literally balls out in 2019. I am flying as fast as I can possibly fly. And there will be things that happen in 2019 that definitely take my companies and what I'm doing to another level. And so, I've done this all on my own. I've never had one investor. And I've done this all on just starting off with a bootstrap and working so hard. It was the Thanksgivings, the Christmases where I was working that I thought, God, I'd love to not be doing this, but I also know that my competitor isn't doing it. And so, that's kind of the mentality that I've had. And 19 will be interesting. I will make sure that I'm doing the best thing for my team, for consumers, primarily even in the CBD space, other people with ailments that, I can help if I can. But it's going to be interesting. 2019 for me will dictate where 20 and beyond goes.
Oh, man. Okay. So that was going to be my close. I mean, we went from big picture to now the whole picture. Where is all of this headed? I mean, it seems like you're on your way to being a mogul. I'm assuming not all of these companies are under the same umbrella. So how does this all come together for you to, make you the owner of everything, the mogul?
Oh, God. I have set it up, and I'm continuing to set it up to where first and foremost is to make sure I'm healthy enough to continue this pace through 2019. The second thing is taking care of my team. And the third thing is I've set up my companies, Tim, to where they all go like this. My marketing company feeds to my events company, feeds to my publishing company, feeds to I've set that all up on purpose. And I will break off parts of it now to go in different directions, again, for what I think is best for everybody. And it's exciting. I will always be in this industry. I have a lot more to do in this industry, but I also am open to the fact that there might be some things, people, or places that can take things higher, further, faster than what I can as an individual. And so it'll be some interesting partnerships coming down the road for sure.
So stay tuned, everyone. Her name is Celeste Miranda. You can check her out if you want to know more about her personally, celestemiranda.com. The Cannabis Marketing Lab, she's the CEO of that, and you can check that out, thecannabismarketinglab.com. Everything else is linked in the description of the podcast below. Terpenes and Testing, Extraction Magazine, CBD Health and Wellness, Cbd Expo, Cannabis Compliance and Packaging, Canna Farm Con, and Concentration 2019. That's a concentration and like extract event. Is that what we didn't talk about that? When is that in 2019?
Okay, so Terpenes and Testing and Extraction Magazine. One new thing with that is, and it just happened on this last issue, the current issue that's out right now, I combined those two magazines. And I did it for specific reasons, but in the long run, we got picked up by Barnes & Noble and lots of different things. And so it's kind of cool how it is. The magazine, if you look at it this way, it's Terpenes and Testing cover. And if you flip it this way, it's the Extraction Magazine cover. And they meet in the middle, but it goes upside down once you get to the middle and you flip it the other way. And so it's a really neat concept. And last year we did Terpenes and Testing World Conference. And so that went really well. It was in San Jose. It was great, very scientific and that sort of thing. But again, I think the industry has plenty of scientific conferences now. There's quite a few, and they're decent. And so, but what the industry doesn't have is extraction conferences. And so I was kind of quick to make that shift to where I'm taking Terpenes and Testing World Conference is becoming concentration conference, and with a primary focus on extraction. And so, just again, spotting a niche, a hole in the industry. And so it's technically Terpenes and Testing World Conference, but switching to concentration now.
And I feel like for anyone entrepreneurially who's listening at home or wants to be an entrepreneur, something that Celeste keeps saying throughout this interview is filling that niche, identifying the niche, and kind of how you feel about it. Because I feel like we've had other entrepreneurs say something similar where it's identify a niche, but also do what you're good at and apply what you're good at to a specific niche. Don't just look for a niche and then say, okay, I'm going to create a company in producing edibles if you're a lawyer.
Right.
You know what I mean? Use your law, use that to develop your company. And I think that's something that you've really done well, because all of these companies, I think the common thread is they all need to be marketed really well. And that's the difference in events, in magazines, in marketing services. And so that being the route that you've taken, it's no question why you've been able to have this success.
Exactly. And you're totally right. You can't put, something round in a square hole, and it's just not going to work. And so, again, that's how I set it up, where all my companies feed to each other. And ultimately, that's what makes my conferences different than other conferences, is that at heart, I'm a marketer, and I know how to market them. I know how to get people there. And so, yeah, exactly. Ultimately, I think that's the difference.
Again, scroll down, check out all the links to the project Celeste has going on, and pay attention to what she's doing, because like she said, 2019 is going to be balls to the wall. Celeste, thanks for joining us. And I do mean it. If you have more stuff coming up in 2019 and you're doing your press rounds or something like that, keep our podcast in your Rolodex, and if you still have a Rolodex, I guess just dated myself there. But anyways, keep us up to date, and we'd love to have you back on the show, okay?
Awesome. Thank you.
That's going to do it for us on the podcast this afternoon. Big thanks to you for listening, whether it was on iTunes, SoundCloud, StayRooted.com, YouTube, wherever you can find this show. We certainly appreciate it. Leave us a nice review if you don't mind, so that we can continue to grow and other people can see that you like what we're doing. My name's been Tim Strumble, and that's going to do it for us on the podcast this afternoon. We'll remind you one more time to work hard, be humble, and stay rooted. See you next time, everybody.